Welcome to Building Healthy Relationships, the 4 Habits podcast, helping you enjoy better harmony at home, thrive at work, and win at life. Here are your hosts, Dr. Andrea and Jon Taylor-Cummings, recognized authorities on the subjects of improving work relationships and cultures, as well as couple and home relationships.
Well, hello and welcome back to yet another episode of our podcast. Great to have you with us around the world, as we like to say. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Great to have you with us. Andrea, you want to say hi?
Yeah, I'm going to say hi. I'm going to say we're doing it differently today because we're sat in different at different desks rather than side by side. So for
I think you mean the East Wing and the West Wing, right? Something like that.
Still in the same house, but set differently just for technology's sake, trying out a different thing, and hopefully it will show up better on LinkedIn. So for those seeing us visually, it might look different this time, but welcome to our home. You've seen more of that this time.
Great to have you with us. So today we have a super interesting topic, actually, because we're going to be looking at high-performing teams. Teams, what is it that makes them perform well? We had to learn this ourselves when we've shared this before. I think when we first set up in business together, what is it? Pretty much 30 years ago now.
Yeah.
We were a pretty dysfunctional team, and we had to learn. Although it was just 2 of us back then, we had to learn how to get on pretty quickly because everything depended on it. Our business, our personal lives, everything depended on it. So we had to get that to come together. And really, what we've learned is what we're going to be sharing bits with you today, but also from our work on the last 30 years of working in this space. But really, high performance is essential for success, especially in today's world of, everybody's looking for one customer experience where customers have come to expect a seamless, consistent experience across all touch points, online, offline, wherever they happen to touch a brand or an organization, they're expecting a seamless, consistent experience. And you've got to have the teams right, working together seamlessly behind that. Otherwise, you're faking it and you're going to get found out. So getting that together is crucial. It might feel like there's a new urgency to make it happen, but actually, there's nothing new. We've been here before. Organizations need to get it right. I mean, we've been talking about organizations going from good to great for a while now. And the question then is, what's the secret sauce? And that's what we're planning to share with you in this session. So as I say, stick around. It's an exciting one. But Andrew, actually, before we get into some of that secret sauce, why don't you share some of the common barriers that we've seen, that people have been experiencing, why this stuff doesn't just happen? It just doesn't just magically happen. Everybody's a high-performing team straight away. What are some of the common barriers we've come across?
Well, people will be very familiar with some of the experiences, the emotions when teams aren't working well. It's friction, it's mistrust. Sometimes it could be a heavy weight in the office because you're conscious that interpersonally some team members aren't getting on. Projects go off the rail. People are held to the letter of the law rather than the spirit of what you're trying to achieve. We use project management systems and documents to put the blame on other functions or other people and show that we've done our bit, but you've not done your bit. And rather than it being a tool to help oil the wheels and make the goal of the project be achieved, it ends up being a defense mechanism and nobody wins. There is so much that we could describe. You mentioned that this isn't new. So the challenge that we have now is working more cross-functionally. As you said, with that seamless experience for customers, for example, traditionally siloed functions like marketing or product development needs to work more closely with accounts and IT and customer service so that there is a seamless experience across each touch point. But that means functions that have almost different personalities in their own right, different ways of working, different deadlines in the process, a different pace of work. Coming together in terms of the systems and the technology is a lot easier than coming together as on the interpersonal relationship side. And that's the thing that we want to dig into and talk about. When you talk about the secret sauce, that's where I think the challenge really comes in, is how do we get the people to pull together and create one united approach in going after the goals.
If we can call it one thing, are we talking soft skills here?
So this is your favorite line, isn't it? Traditionally, it's been called soft skills. We are all learning that this is probably the hardest part of work, is how do we do the really hard work of getting along well so that we can pull together in the same direction and achieve the desired outcomes faster than the competition and without expending all our energies fighting interpersonal challenges in the organization, but actually pouring our energies into innovation and creating globally relevant solutions.
Absolutely. So in this session, what we want to do, we're excited to share with you what we've identified as 7 pillars, really, of high-performing teams from our 30 years of experience of working in the space, but also from looking at best practice, from trying to understand what it is that makes teams successful. And really, there are 7 pillars, and I'm going to share them with you, reel them off quickly, but then we're going to unpack them a little bit and show you what that means in practice. So first up is shared values, which is around really agreeing a set of values around how you're going to behave and work together for the greater good, for the common purpose that you're all working towards. What will it take to achieve that? And then clearly define roles, really who is responsible for what to make this thing happen. Mutual respect, again, sounds obvious, but that's about maintaining dignity for all the people in the team so that they can respect each other's roles and work together for again, this common good. Honest dialogue, that really is about whatever might be on your mind that might be blocking you from achieving what you need to do, having a conversation about that. Not necessarily easy conversations to have, but you got to have those conversations in an open and honest way for success in the team. Then number 5 is enabling communication processes, and that's about having the right channels in place. Again, we're going to unpack that in a moment. Mutual recognition, which is really more about keeping the energy positive, keeping the energy alive, doing what it takes to fuel the people, and that's often through recognition, mutual recognition. And number 7 is continuous learning, and that really is about continuing to sharpen the saw and just continue to learn and keep, again, the environment positive. As we said, human skills, about relating to the people, interpersonal relationships. Easier said than done. And often we found the challenge is not agreeing on what each of those things mean. That can be the challenge because people might have a different understanding. We've said clearly defined roles. Well, actually, what does that mean? Your understanding of what the roles might be different to my understanding of what the roles might be. So we need real clarity on that, and we need to have conversations around them, sometimes courageous conversations to agree each of those 7 categories. And in our experience, really, conflict is a thing that often derails projects. But there really is a difference between operational conflict and interpersonal conflict, and that's really what we want to unpack for you in this session here today. So, Andrea, why don't you talk us through a bit more of that from our experience of working in this space and your specific experience in change management?
That's a really good launch point or point to launch the conversation from, bringing up that difference between operational conflict and interpersonal conflict, because organizations tend to major on the operational side of things, probably because it's easier to implement. And as we've said before, the real challenges tend to come from the interpersonal side of things. So these days, especially, we have many change management systems and processes and protocols, project management systems, things that help us to clarify the roles, manage stakeholders, choose champions that have influence, across the organization, manage interdependencies and deadlines, and agree meeting frequencies and milestones and all the kind of structural checks that we can put in place. That speaks to, of the 7, it would really help to clarify and define the goals. It will help to clarify the overarching goal that everybody is working towards. It will help to create these enabling communication channels and, as I said, checkpoints and so on. But especially when people are working cross-functionally and hybrid. It's the trusting relationships between team members that make the difference. The quality of the relationships literally breathe life into these structures and processes, oil the wheels, if you like,
Mm-hmm.
and make the experiences move from just this grinding transactional approach to something that's a really meaningful and flexible and agile partnership. And that's the kind of teams that we need these days, for the reasons that you described, being, more agile and responsive to an ever-changing global marketplace. So
So
if
let's
you
bring them alive. Let's bring them alive. What does that look like?
Well, if you look at shared values, for example, we can talk about and state the goal and put it on, mission statements in the wall. This is what we're after. But that point you brought out with agreeing how it is that we're going to work together, that's what makes the difference at the team level. So one of the teams that we worked with, they were very clear in setting the understanding and the agreement that nothing was off the table. Whatever needed to be discussed would be discussed. The focus would be on delivering the results rather than just being present. So by signing up to these values and these ways of working, they really started to set the culture of how they wanted to work together and how that would be successful for them. We spoke about mutual respect. You can't legislate for mutual respect. It takes a behavioral and a cultural approach to really embracing diversity, because we know now if you want innovation, you really need to have diverse perspectives coming into the table.
Mm.
So if I think back to the days, when we were just getting computers and moving from mainframes to desktop computers, and all the organizations were working towards business process reengineering. The way that they tried to manage this difference in the IT function and the rest of the business was having a hybrid project manager, meaning one person that understood technology and also understood the needs of the
Mm.
business. To work cross-functionally now, everybody's kind of up to speed on IT, but what we need is a respect for the different skills and the different perspectives, rather than looking for one person to kind of speak both languages.
Bridge the gap. Yeah.
Everybody needs to be able to understand diversity, to understand different backgrounds, different personalities, different work styles, and genuinely respect the skills and the strengths that a mix of different people are bringing, to be able to work together well and pull on each other's strengths. That's what we mean when we say mutual respect, and it's about trusting each other's skills.
Sounds like that's a tall order then, because then you're having everybody. I get that will then give the one customer experience, or whoever they happen to come across as from an outside perspective, they will have that singularity of experience. But it sounds like it's a tall order to get people working together like this. What else? What else are some of the other things that will help make this happen?
Well, it is a tall order, and maybe that's why we've not paid enough attention to intentionally building the team dynamics where you have these strong, trusting relationships.
Mm.
But if you look at the other pillar, honest dialogue, you can't legislate for honest dialogue. You can't force people to speak up when they see things going off the rail, or to talk about the risks that they're seeing, or the mistake that they've made, or the additional support that they might need because of the home situations, personal situations. You can't legislate to free up communication to be that open and honest. But culturally, behaviorally, these are the things that you want to model, especially as a leader. The leader really will set the tone here, how the leader turns up when somebody makes a mistake, how the leader deals with conflict, and the values that you agree that you're going to sign up to in working through any of these interpersonal challenges. Those are the things that will signal to everybody else whether it's psychologically safe to be open and honest and really talk about what's going on. Projects will go off the rail if you don't have this free flowing communication.
Mm.
But again, it's going to come down to the quality of the relationships and what the leader and leaders or influential people model to determine whether or not you'll have honest dialogue. That's not something that you can create through a system or a process.
Great. What about the roles? We jump past that one. Clearly defined roles. What does that mean in the context of interpersonal relationships here now?
Well, again, if we go back to the change management systems and the project management, the processes that you're using will help you to define key roles in any project or program.
Mm-hmm.
But things shift, life changes, and as people are working on projects, it's the quality of conversations that you'll have to update. Oh, my role shifted a bit, my project shifted a bit, I'm not on this project, I'm on that project, this has now taken priority. It's more, how do you keep updated and abreast of what's going on in the team, even though on paper you know what the roles are, and quite often people use those on paper definitions more in defense and in blame
Mm-hmm.
than in really understanding and keeping up to date with what's going on. So that's what I mean. Keeping constantly updated and interacting with people as their roles and responsibilities might shift over the life of the project, or as things might change in urgency and priority. How do you keep abreast of who's doing what and whether or not you're tracking towards the deadline?
Because otherwise you might get to the end of the, I don't know, 6-month mid-year period or the end of the year, and the person then or a person in their line manager might sit down together and say, hang on, these are the things we agreed at the beginning of the year, but actually you've delivered half of them and you've delivered a bunch of other things that we didn't talk about at the list then. Things are changing, things are moving. We had this conversation with an organization just the other day.
Yeah.
How do we manage that? What's the secret for keeping that on track?
Well, again, it's the combination of operationally, how do you keep the communication wheels turning, keep people updated, the meetings, the milestones and the deadlines. But we'll always go back to how well is the team keeping each other updated through formal and informal channels. Lots of people use Slack to just update, this has happened, this didn't happen, I'm not available then, life has changed a bit and we need to support or substitute for each other. It's that kind of informal conversation alongside the formal systems and processes that will help to keep things on track. One of the examples in terms of communication processes, this team that is exceptional in what they're doing have daily 30-minute check-ins, which sound onerous and sound repetitive, but they're very clear on what they're doing each day.
Mm-hmm.
So at the start of the week, it's about setting the agenda for the week. The second day might be checking in with interdependencies with other functions. The third day is some other detail within the overall goal for the week, focusing maybe on sub projects within the projects. On the Thursday, it's checking in, well, what's the progress for the week so far? What else can we finish for this week? And what's going to be put to next week? And importantly, they save the Friday for a check-in on the people. It's talking about, how are you doing? What are the highs and lows for you this week? Whether it's personal or professional, they have that ease of conversation. And we really believe that that's one of the hallmarks of a really high functioning, high performing team, is when you can talk about stuff that cross the personal professional divide, the ease with which you can bring those things to the table and say, this is working for me. I have a real challenge at home, which is consuming all my attention with the kids or the partner or parents and mental health issues. When you can speak honestly about the things that can interrupt how present you are or how available you are, that helps people make better decisions and work together and support each other. And that really fuels the feeling of appreciation and being seen and being cared for, so that people can turn up really well.
And if I can jump in on that one, because I'm aware of that client example as well. And I think what I found was really impressive about how they've managed to get this work, their daily 30-minute check-ins, is they are a very geographically dispersed team.
Yeah.
And they all work hybrid in their own different locations, but clearly when you've got geographies into it as well, now you've got some people in the US, you've got some people in Europe, you've got people in different parts of different states in the US, different parts of the world. They can't always be together, but they can always be together online. So the way they've done these 30-minute check-ins is they're all online, whether you happen to be in the office that day or whether you happen to be working from home that day. Everybody still at the same time jumps on this 30-minute call, and they have that connection. And what really blew us away when we spoke with them is these calls didn't feel like a burden. They were something that people wanted to do. In fact, well, they'd asked the team before they set it up, and they have, I don't want to say 100% attendance every time, but it's not far off that. People want to be at these calls, and they're actually getting something out of it as well. Particularly the Friday call, where they have their highs and lows, and they talk about things, personal and professional, things that might be blocking you, things that might be. This is the honest dialogue piece, where things might be the process. I should say the process to help you have that honest dialogue. Things that might be blocking you, things that might be things that might have fueled you on the journey. Have that conversation and encourage one another, and that's been a really key part to doing that. So great, thanks for sharing that. What about mutual recognition? What are we seeing in that space?
Well, that continues the conversation of the Friday meeting, but also how they use the communication channels, where they'll give a shout out to each other. They'll verbally acknowledge very excitedly whenever somebody's done something really well or is having a birthday, or they just do these public messages of appreciation. And we might sometimes look at that and think, that's not keeping it professional, but it's keeping it human. It's making people feel seen, cared for, in just saying thank you, great job, really saw what you did there, love what you did there, knew you overcame that challenge, it was really tough. Just using the communication channel to make it more human and to recognize the effort, the sacrifice, the going the extra mile that people are doing, so that they feel seen, appreciated, and cared for.
Well, there's that expression that we love, or that quote that we love, which is that people go where they feel welcomed, but they stay where they feel valued. Got to make the people feel valued. If you have that recognition, making people feel valued, they'll stick around. If you don't, they'll go wherever somebody else is making them feel valued. So really, really important for the teams to be doing that.
Yeah.
What about continuous learning? What in that space? What are some of the tips?
Yeah, and it's interesting that with each of these pillars, there's a consistent thread of trusting relationships that runs through, because to be able to have continuous learning, there are things that you can organize and put into the structure, but again, it's going to be made easier and flow more consistently if you have the relationships that do it. So when people make a mistake, the way that they are treated, or the way that the leader treats them, the way that others treats them, will will create the culture of whether it's okay to admit mistakes and ask for help, or if you need to pretend and cover it, which of course creates risk down the line and cause projects to go belly up because of that. But this idea of continuous learning is creating a space where mistakes are learning opportunities, dealing with the consequences, encouraging people to be able to speak up easily or freely and saying, put your hand up, I got that wrong, knowing they're not going to be beaten up about it, but that it will be a learning conversation of what we can do differently. So it's this growth mindset versus fixed mindset, creating the culture of a growth mindset. One of the examples, or one of the ways we saw this coming alive, was with a team that held no blame conversations as part of their project review. So they'd come together, they would freely talk about, of course, they'd celebrate everything that went well, because that's an important part of learning. This worked, so let's keep doing it. But they would check in with each other and say, okay, where were the hiccups? Where are the things that didn't go well? What is it that we can do differently next time to keep improving, to have this mindset of growth and continuous learning, and just making it clear that there is no blame here. That's not what this is about. We just want to learn and improve next time. Creates the space for people to speak up freely and say, well, this went wrong, or I didn't get this right. And everybody can learn from that. And another thing to help with the learning is to delegate and to really encourage junior people to step up and lead, or share what they learned on their training course with the rest of the group, or, invite people from other functions and departments to come and share information from their perspective that really helps the team to do better at their job. So just this mindset, this attitude of wanting to learn and grow and get better without casting blame, again, depends on having the trusting relationships, but helps the team to be high performing in what they're doing.
Yeah, I have to say, when we there were a couple of exercises we did recently in working with some high performing teams to just help unpack the secret sauce. The summary word that came away for us, at least, was they felt like family. And I have to be careful how I say that, because we've seen some dysfunctional or unhealthy families. I should say, maybe I should redefine that. They felt like a healthy family.
Yes.
Where they had each other's backs, they were there for each other, they had those conversations, they were all kind of moving in the same direction, there was that mutual respect, they had open conversations, there was the mutual recognition, there was the praise, there were the shout outs, everybody wanted to grow, there was a continuous learning. All the pieces were in there for a healthy family. And I think for us, that kind of captured it. That's the gold standard. That's what we're all trying to achieve here with a high performing team. That sense that everybody feels like they've got each other's back, and it's a healthy family. It's kind of one way of putting it there. Not family in the sort of over familiar set. Exactly.
Yeah.
I think people might get the wrong idea about that there. But just a sense of everybody was committed, they were there for each other. This wasn't just a team that had come together to achieve a goal and then go their separate ways. These were almost becoming lifelong friends, kind of a thing. There was in that kind of space where they were good people, and they all respected each other, and they wanted the best for each other, and therefore the team thrived.
And I think the important point that we want to land is that the 7 pillars are probably the characteristics of high performing teams that this is what will exist in a team that pulls together well. How you get there is around being intentional about building these interpersonal, trusting relationships. Those are the things that oil the wheel for everything else. So, of course, it comes down to, what are the behaviors that we need to be intentional about, and how do we develop the habits of turning up better, having better conversations, and achieving better outcomes as a result. And the better outcome is around becoming that high performing team, because as we said, these days the world is changing so rapidly. I mean, just constantly, geopolitically, economically, there is just so much going on, AI and so on. Nobody necessarily has the answer. We don't even know what the challenge is next week that we'll have to address as individuals, as teams, as organizations. But when you have people who can lean on each other and work together, pouring all their energies into solving whatever the next problem is, that's where you get innovation, creativity, a really effective response to whatever global demand or global challenge that there is. And that's why building strong teams of trust to create that high performance, that's what's become mission critical for organizations now. So John, why don't you share with us then, we always talk about, if you're going to be intentional about behaviors to build strong relationships, here are 4 habits to start with. Why don't you run us through the 4 habits as a reminder?
Well, happy to. I mean, we have been so grateful to hear the words keep coming back. We talk to some of these teams that we've worked with over the years, and they say, actually, the habits that you guys have shared with us and helped us build as a team are really what allow us to be intentional about working on our relationships, making sure that we have each other's backs and we're there for each other as team. and really what that boils down to is in very simple terms, habit one, be curious, not critical, is all about helping people understand, value, and respect different approaches. We learned that the hard way back in the day. You have to understand that people have different approaches. Your way is not necessarily the right way every time. I used to think that. You might be surprised to hear me say that now, but yeah, people have different approaches, and there more than one way. There's more than one way to skin a cat, I guess, is how some people might put the expression there. You might still get to the same end result, and you've got to value and respect different approaches if you want to work together in harmony. And that's what habit one is all about. Habit two is about getting better at handling conflict with more care. Conflict is going to happen when people have different approaches and different mindsets, they're thinking differently, acting differently. You're going to have conflict. It's going to happen. How you handle that conflict is it makes the difference between whether you have a successful outcome or you don't. And so really developing habit two is about learning to overcome some of our selfish tendencies, particularly in stressful situations. That's where sometimes the worst side of us can come out, and really, really important to be able to manage that well for high performing teams. Habit three of getting better at asking rather than assuming is really where you get to understand that just because something isn't important to you doesn't mean it's not important to other people. And actually, the flip side of that is just because something is important to you doesn't mean it's equally important to other people as well. You've really got to get into the habit of build that muscle of asking some of those questions rather than assuming. And sometimes those are not easy conversations to have, but they're essential if you want to build that mutual understanding and they work together as this healthy family. Let's call it that for a moment. And then, of course, habit number four of connect before you correct is really where people know when you build that kind of connection, people know that you have their back. We always love coming back to this one example Andrea shares of a former line manager, essentially, that she had, who would say, look, I've got some feedback for you, but just so you know, this might hit you between the eyes when I tell you this feedback is going to be tough feedback for you to take, but I'm here for you. I've got your back. I'm here for you, and we'll work through this together. And it's having that connection, that trust in place, then allows you to hear the feedback and know that you can work through it in a comfortable place. So really that feeling of family, I want to say healthy family, has been the common denominator that we've seen across these high performing teams. And it's really what people want to be developing to move forward as a high performing team in their own space, whatever it is, wherever it is, what sort of organization, what sort of culture they're in, that feeling of closeness.
I think just going through the habits reminded me of two assumptions, I think, that are really challenging the way we work now. I think as organizations, the struggle is to move from, you remember the kind of Taylorism approach when the Industrial Revolution and everything was measured and precise and broken down into bite-sized chunks on how you're going to do a really effective process and time and management of chunks of work was the focus. And we've kind of managed people that way, so that this need to have people in the office all the time watching over different aspects of work still exists in the mind, even though we might not be saying this is the way we're managing. We're still tethered to that way of managing. This assumption of needing to be present is really challenging a more team approach, a more fluid approach, working more hybrid, working more flexibly, and encouraging people to turn up well. That's challenging the kind of flexibility that people value now. So that's one assumption to question. You mentioned about feedback. This idea of performance reviews is always a challenge where most people feel nervous going into it. Probably both the manager doing
Yep,
the
both sides.
performance review and the team member. And I think to do teams well, the relationship has to be strong enough. Otherwise, the performance reviews will be kind of scratchy at best. I can't think of a better word. How can we get better at creating two-way feedback and a culture of constantly checking in so that there are no surprises in the performance review. Getting performance reviews right depend on having a strong relationship, which is habit 4, provoke that thought in me, connecting, really working on having strong connections so that you have the relationship foundation to talk about anything where people know you have their backs. You're not just on their back about stuff. Those are the things that keep the emotions in positive territory so that teams can work together well, and relationships can be strong.
I think
Check
that
your
summarizes.
assumption. Yeah.
I guess I think that summarizes it beautifully there, that people know that you have their backs rather than being on their backs. Because let's not forget that having a high performing team really is about delivering results. Ultimately, that's what people care about. That's what organizations care about, delivering the results. That's what pays the bills. That's what keeps them going. So having a nice team in place is interesting. But if you have a nice team that ain't delivering the results, then that's not so interesting. You've got to have those results. So as I say, and generally what people tend to do is get on other people's backs when they're under pressure to deliver the results.
Yeah.
So having that environment in which people, or the culture in which people feel like you have their back rather than you're constantly on their back, is really what this comes down to. I think that summarizes it beautifully. I think it's a wrap. I think we might call this talk Going Beyond Collaboration or something like that, because this really
Yeah.
is about how do you get those teams to work together rather than just working together in a humdrum fashion, but actually perform and go from good to great.
Yeah.
So
Really pull together and deliver results and
yeah,
be there for each other to support each other through life, which is challenging for everybody. So
yeah,
how do we keep the conversations honest, keep on top of where we are with progress, with challenges, with risks, with supporting each other as an individual rather than just keeping the professional distance? How do we really get stuck in, care for each other, work together well, and deliver amazing results? Compassion in the workplace, making it more human.
absolutely. So I've enjoyed having this conversation. I'm sure you have too. Well, I hope
Yeah,
you
I have, even though you're far away and not
even though
beside
we're
me.
in the east and west wing. But no, I think well, we've enjoyed the conversation. We love continuing these conversations. If you listening in today would like to join us for more of these conversations, we actually run a masterclass, and we do that every now and again. And you can find out more about that if you go to the 4habits.com/top teams, you can find a link to sign up there. And it's a 45, 60-minute masterclass that we run in this space, just sharing more of these best practices and how to actually unpack them. And we love having people in the room who can also share best practice from their perspective. And we work together, and some great ideas come from that. So if you're able to join us for that, again, as I say, the 4habits.com/top teams, we'll put the link in the show notes. But also, if you'd like to have a conversation with us directly about how we can work together to help you in your team or the teams around you go from good to great, deliver some of these excellent results, let's have a conversation. You can book a call at the4habits.com/book a call. Again, we'll put the link in the show notes, but we'd love to continue the conversation. Let's have a chat and let's see how we go from there. But for now, I think it's a wrap.
It's a wrap.
Why don't you say farewell from the studio?
From the studio. What am I in the East Wing? Well, thank you for joining us for this conversation. Actually, send in if there is anything that you would like us to discuss, any particular topic that you'd love to hear us just chew over together, or join us for a conversation to chew over together. Do get in touch with us again. The link will be in the show notes. But from us in the East and the West Wing, as we say, it's a wrap. Thank you for listening in, and look forward to having you join on the next podcast.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed that episode. And if you did, and you want to hear more, the best thing to do is subscribe. Then you'll never miss an episode. There's a new one every Friday. You can stay connected with us on social media at The 4 Habits for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and to participate in discussions related to the show. We always love to hear from you. And of course, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review on your preferred platform to allow us to reach more listeners and help people around the globe radically transform the way they do relationships, so they too can enjoy better harmony at home, thrive at work, and win at life.